Hey, Gary, how's it going?
Fantastic. We've had a wonderful trip out to California. Tuesday, we headed back to Florida to celebrate the holidays and then come back out in January and talk to some children here locally.
You know, I'd like for this to be a conversation. When I do interviews, I always try to do it a little differently, but it almost turns out the same. And what it really comes down to is kind of getting to know each other, but really kind of getting to know you. Gary Littrell, Medal of Honor recipient, Command Sgt Major. You know, when I was in the Marine Corps, Sergeant Major E9, that was like, God, actually. It was like really, really top rank. But I did want to touch, before we get to what you're doing now with the nonprofit and all of the great things you're doing with your wife, Suzanne, at the integrity path, we'll get there. I did kind of want to just bring up a little bit, and I've always said this when you and I have had these conversations, I really am intrigued by your story before the military and how that like triggered in your mind. To me, it's kind of rare. So just take us through that real quickly, your age, and then you got out. And I don't want to reveal too much. So how did this whole thing start with you joining the Army and the military? Mm-hmm. Right.
When I was 9 years old, my uncle took me down to Fort Campbell. We went out on the drop zone and looked up and seen the members of the 101st Airborne Division jumping out of an airplane. I had no idea people jumped out of an airplane. And I looked up and I said, wow, that's got to be me. At that time, I felt that I was a nobody or a nothing. You know, I wasn't, because God don't make nobodies and nothings. But at that time, I felt it because I come from a very dysfunctional family. One of the first things that I can remember is my dad and uncle getting in a knife fight and bleeding all over the house.
Oh my.
One of the second things that I can remember in life when I was about 5 years old was looking down in the casket of my dead mother and little brother that had got run over by a car because my father wasn't there. Lived with one relative to the next relative, and when I was 14 years old, right before my 15th birthday, I was living with the uncle that had taken me down to Fort Campbell. And it was only a few days before my 15th birthday. And I heard my brother and uncle talking, and I heard my uncle say, you know, it's time somebody else come and get him because, you know, we don't want him anymore.
And they're talking about you.
Talking about me.
Right, yeah.
You know, and it's like, wow, what have I done? You know, I thought I was a pretty likable person, but so I'm laying there in bed thinking, well, what do I do? If I'm not wanted, I need to get out of here. I had a billfold that my grandmother had given me, and the only thing inside that billfold was a birth certificate. I don't know why grandmother gave me a wallet with a birth certificate. And I said, you know, I'm going to hitchhike out to California, where my grandmother on my father's side lived in El Monte. And I'm going to doctor up my birth certificate because nobody in California knows me. That's how my little 14-year-old brain was thinking. I'm going to doctor up my birth certificate. I'm going to join the Army. So next morning, I was out on Highway 41A in Kentucky, my thumb out. 4 days later, I arrived in El Monte at my grandmother's house, and I said, Grandmother, I just need a place to stay for a few days because, again, I felt that I was not really wanted there. And I doctored up my birth certificate, went down to the recruiter, joined the Army. My birth certificate was good enough.
Well, I want to make sure I point that out again. How old were you?
I on my 15th birthday.
I'm thinking of my 14-year-old daughter now.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way in her mind, and maybe if I had a son, it'd be the same way, that they would be thinking of joining the military, jumping out of a plane or a helicopter. So, that part really intrigues me at your age that you were thinking this way, which I think also probably ties in to fast forward all the way until today. And we'll get into it, your character and how that really unfolded and developed. So, okay, so you joined the Army, and technically you're 15 years old. And so take us from that point. This is a part of the excitement.
You know, I grew up fast. I had to grow up tough because of my dysfunctional family. So at the age of 15, I felt like I was an adult. And so I'll go down to the recruiter, I join the Army, get halfway through basic training. And we was out on the rifle range, and I heard the instructor say, this kid Littrell can shoot.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, well, don't everyone? growing up in Kentucky, a 22 rifle was my pacifier.
Yeah, Texas was the same way. My grandfather, growing up, we'd go up in Amarillo. He had rifles and guns all over the place. It wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, now we're sensitive to that sort of thing.
Exactly.
But it seems like you're in good shape already, to serve the military at that time.
I was. So we're out on the rifle range. They said, this kid, Littrell, can shoot. We got back in formation, and I can remember the drill sergeant saying, well, we had 10 people fire expert today, and our best shot was Private Littrell. And that's the first compliment that I think I'd ever received in my life.
And that was I would imagine, very meaningful.
Very, very meaningful.
Right.
My little bony chest was stuck out, And so we're marching back, and I'm marching on cloud nine. We get back to the company, and the first sergeant walks out and gives instructions to the platoon sergeant and says, and I need to see Private Littrell in the orderly room. I thought I was going in to get a pat on the back from the first sergeant. Oh, my God. That's God.
That's right.
To me, that was God.
Yeah.
And I'm going in, and God's going to give me a pat on the back for being the best shot. I walked in, and he looked at me, and he said, Littrell, how old are you? I knew I was busted. I said, First Sergeant, I'm 15. But I'm a good soldier, and I'm a real good shot. I can stay, right? He said, no. He gave me a $10 bill and a bus ticket to L.A. And I get off the bus in L.A., and I said, I'm not going back to my grandmother's house. I said, I felt unwanted. I said, I'm not going to be a burden on her. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was walking the streets of L.A. virtually homeless. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know I'm not going back to Kentucky, and I know I'm not going back. Went past an auto parts store, and there was a help wanted sign, and that was my saving grace. I walked in, looked up at a giant of a man, Mr. Toy, and I said, sir, you got a help wanted sign in your window. I need a job. He looked at me and said, how old are you, kid? I said, I'm 15. I told him the whole story. Joined the Army, got halfway through basic training. He says, where's your parents? I don't have them, And he says, okay, you got a job. I'll pay you $1 an hour, and there's a room upstairs. So I worked at the auto parts store until I was 17. On my real 17th birthday, I joined the Army again because I felt, again, as I said, I felt I was a nobody, a nothing, the one most likely never to succeed in anything. But I had a feeling inside, I'm going to be somebody someday. I don't know how, and I don't know when, but I am going to be somebody someday.
All right, so on that note, when you thought to yourself, I'm going to be somebody, did you think that you were going to be somebody in the military? Did you go that far in your thought yet? Because it seemed like, man, you were able to really carry yourself with your own set of tools when it comes to hope, right? Was it the military, or you just say, hey, I'm just going to be somebody? I'm just kind of curious about that.
I thought the military was the platform that I needed.
Gotcha. Okay.
To be somebody.
Right.
And so.
And I would agree with that, being former Marine or Marine.
And it was.
Right.
It was what I needed. It was my first family, actually. I didn't have a for real family. My first brothers was my Army brothers. My first real dad was that platoon sergeant.
Right.
And I felt that I could be somebody. One of the first people I come in contact with was a young buck sergeant by the name of Sergeant Sawyer. He had master parachute wings on his chest. He had an Army Ranger tab on his left shoulder. Epitome of a soldier. His uniform was immaculate 24 hours a day. His boots were spit shine. He gave all the classes when we was marching from one place to other. Who was it? Sergeant Sawyer. I idolized Sergeant Sawyer, and I didn't know what the word mentor meant back then. I was a high school dropout.
I was just thinking that, mentor.
Okay.
Right.
I didn't know the word mentor. I just said to myself, I'm going to be like Sergeant Sawyer, which in turn was my mentor. And so I was like Sergeant Sawyer. And when I was 19, I made Sergeant E5, went to the 82nd Airborne Division. First thing I went to was Airborne School, Jump Master School. I got those master parachute wings on my chest. The following year, I went to Ranger School, and I got that Ranger tab. Now I could look in the mirror, and I was Sergeant Sawyer. Now those young privates looked at me. I realized early, Joe, that I had a gift. And that gift was I could read a field manual at night, and I could get up the next day in front of a group of people and give a class verbatim. It was a gift. I didn't realize it. And people kept saying, Littrell, you've got a gift. You are gifted. Now I'm saying to myself, wow, the Army is going to allow me to be a somebody someday. And I'm starting to feel it now. I feel I'm the mentor for these young privates. They want to grow up and be like Sergeant Littrell, like I want to grow up and be like Sergeant Sawyer.
That's really awesome. And I want to pause real quickly because there's a few things that I believe you may even for yourself take for granted that are gigantic, enormous, magnificent, significant. And that is, you talked about jump school, right? Or getting your wings.
Right.
How many times do you have to jump out before you get your wings? Just for the people who aren't familiar with how you earn that, you know, 10, 20 times. I know there's a silver and a gold. I never got jump wings, but I want to touch on that for a second.
When you go to jump school, back then it was 3 weeks. I think it still is. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And they teach you how to land. It's called a parachute landing fall.
Right.
They teach you how to jump out of a 35-foot tower and go into the position that you do when you exit the aircraft.
Right.
You learn all the safety factors, and then you get in an aircraft and you make 5 jumps.
5 jumps, okay.
And after 5 jumps, you get your novice parachute wings.
Okay.
And then after you get enough jumps, back then I had 67 jumps, but it's not just a jump.
67.
It was accumulation.
Oh, okay. I can't even think of one. And my wife would not let me do it now because every now and then think about it, man, it'd be kind of nice to do that. But
it's accumulation of night jumps,
yeah.
Mass tactical jumps.
Yeah.
And so with 67 jumps and all the prerequisites of jump school, I got my senior wings.
Yeah, so.
That's a wing with a star with a wreath around it.
See, I just think that that's worth mentioning because there's a lot of people that don't know what it takes to get that. The other part, as you said, the Army Ranger.
Yes.
Okay, so they're like special unit of the Army, and what are they? Kind of what's their main mission, the Army Rangers? We know what recon, we know Navy SEALs. How about Army Rangers? Behind enemy lines or?
Army Rangers are experts in patrolling.
Gotcha, okay.
Night movements, behind enemy line, capturing or killing high-value targets.
High-value targets.
High-value targets.
Gotcha.
They're called upon right when the regular Army can't do it, and right before they have to call Delta Force to come in for the extreme high-value targets.
Gotcha.
So high-value targets, primarily night moves, sometimes jumping in, okay? But I contribute me being alive today on graduating from Ranger School.
See, and again, I just think that it's just such a powerful experience that you had, and for people to know that you went through all of this and really almost taking it for granted. I mean that in a very complimentary way, that you're also doing this not only to be somebody, as you talked about earlier, but you also wanted to be an example for others. That's what's like really inspiring, because we were talking about this earlier, that a lot of what we need to do for ourselves when we want to feel better, get through life, is actually giving back, being of help, being of service to others. And you were already thinking that. And then to your gift, what you were talking about, I've actually seen you capture the youth, high school type age or and younger. I've seen you capture their attention in about 90 seconds with your story and your words. So that's why I think it's really important that we continue to share what you're doing, your story, and then kind of continue to push this out. All right, so now you kind of in your mind established, hey, I'm Sergeant Sawyer, right?
Right.
Okay, and then at that point, and you're talking about, you're 19, right?
I'm 19.
That's like a full
85.
life for a lot of people. You've done a lot at 19. Right. Okay, so at 19, or so what's going on there now? What's next? Is it Vietnam? I don't want to.
Well, after I graduated from Ranger School, I graduated second in my class behind my Ranger buddy, who was a Marine E6, and I was a Army E5. But that's okay. When we started, I said, you and I will be 1 and 2 in our class.
That's awesome.
I was hoping it would be I was number 1 and him too, but I'm happy with number 2 in my class.
Sure.
And so they invited me to stay there as an instructor. So I instructed in Ranger School, got a set of orders to go to Vietnam. I actually got 2 sets of orders, one to go to language school, and then from there on. So I attended Defensive Language Institution at Fort Bliss, Texas for 1 year to learn the Vietnamese language.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to Vietnam as an advisor to the Vietnamese Ranger Battalion. And that was an awesome experience.
Now, in Vietnam, I just also want to point this out because I learned this later on in life after my dad went to Vietnam and wasn't interested until I got in the Marine Corps and got out, that you're getting in there with through the Huey, right?
Oh, yes.
Right. So, I mean, there's no driving in. There's no, it's the Huey. So the Vietnam Rangers, is that what you said?
They were Vietnam Rangers.
Right. And so how are they compared to the Army Rangers? I know different cultures have different ways of training their people.
They were fantastic. I got to Vietnam and joined the unit right after the battalion had been annihilated. Life expectancy for a Vietnamese Ranger battalion is about 8 months.
Oh, my goodness.
And I got there, the battalion had just been virtually wiped out. So I went to their Ranger school, which was copied after our Ranger school. I went through Ranger school with a group of soldiers to become Rangers, and the officers and NCOs were already Ranger qualified. And so we graduated from Ranger School, and I was proud to say I went through their Ranger School with them. And then we formed the new battalion, pretty much all brand new soldiers. And 8 months later, sure enough, we got annihilated again.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. So moving forward to the Medal of Honor part as to how and why you received this award. If you could explain for the people who are watching, receiving the Medal of Honor, what has to take place in order for the President of the United States to put it around your shoulder? Is it Congress? Is it the military, your supervisors? Do they write letters? I mean, obviously, there's some activity, someone would say heroic type activity. I don't think I've ever met a Medal of Honor recipient that said, hey, I was just doing my job sort of thing. But wear it as a result of carrying on positivity. But what does it take to get one of these?
To receive the Medal of Honor, you have to be recommended by eyewitnesses.
Okay.
Someone has to witness the action and feel that that action went above and beyond the call of duty, at risk of your life. And they make recommendations for the award, and then it goes through the chain of command all the way up to the president.
Wow.
And if the president signs off on it, then you have a presentation in the White House, and it's presented by the president.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised? Did they tell you that, hey, I think we're going to recommend, and we'll get into a little bit as to what you did to receive that recommendation. But were you surprised? Were you expecting it? Did you want it? Or
Totally surprised.
Oh, okay. Even better, right?
I was totally surprised. At my going away party from Vietnam, we drank a lot in Vietnam.
Oh,
If we wasn't fighting, we was drinking. Now these past wars, alcohol was not allowed and authorized, and that's good, I think. But in Vietnam, if we wasn't in the field fighting, we was in the clubhouse drinking.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my going away party, we all had quite a bit to drink. And my colonel come up and he put his arm around me and he said, Littrell, you know that fight you got into a few months ago? I'm thinking about putting you in for the Medal of Honor. And I said, okay, thanks. I brushed it off. Got back to the States, and it's like, wow. He said he's going to recommend me for the Medal of Honor. That's super. Time passed. I went over to the library, And I got a book on the prerequisites of the Medal of Honor. And I read it, and I said, ooh, I don't qualify for that. You know, there's no way I qualify for that in a 4-day, 4-night fight. Because most of the time, it was for one action, an action for a short period of time. Mine was accumulation of action over a 4-day period.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk about that, because I even looked you up on Wikipedia and the Medal of Honor Society or Foundation, and they describe that pretty in detail. But just describe that or summarize that, what you went through in those 4 days. I mean, it must have been scary as all can be. What happened that, as a result, you got the recommendation Medal of Honor in Vietnam?
It was an interesting 4 days, Joe.
Right.
Very interesting 4 days. What become a very close friend of mine, Gary Littrell, fellow Medal of Honor recipient. There was 2 Medal of Honor recipients out of that battle, myself and Gary Littrell. Gary was in a Special Forces base camp that had been overrun by the 66th NVA Regiment, the 29th NVA Regiment, and the K6 Sapper Battalion, which was about 5,000 of the North Vietnamese best.
Oh my goodness.
And they had overrun this Special Forces base camp, pretty much annihilating everyone. So my mission was to take my Vietnamese Ranger Battalion, penetrate their compound, set up security, and evacuate the dead and wounded. I got one hilltop short, and nighttime fell on us. We didn't move at night. The only people who moved at night was the enemy. And so we didn't move at night. So we got on top of the hill. I had 473 Vietnamese Rangers and 4 American advisors. I had 2 lieutenants, a sergeant E5, and I was the E7. I had 8 months in country. All 3 of them were brand new in country. So they all looked at me. They referred to me as the old man. Okay?
How old were you?
24.
24. Okay, you're an old man at
24, and
okay.
they referred to me as the old man. I think they, not in age, but in,
I know
in
what
experience.
You mean. Right. Sure,
okay.
Right, yeah.
And so I looked at the 4 advisors, and I said, "We need to dig in tonight. I just don't feel comfortable on top of this hill. I'm going to take some C4, and I'm going to fall off the side, and I'm going to blow us a landing zone because I just got a feeling we may need some helicopter support."
Wow.
Before we get off this hill, you develop a sixth sense in combat. Again, I'd had 8 months in country. I had been in numerous firefights. So I was seasoned, and they were 3 brand new. They were still peeing stateside water. And so I said, dig in. I'm going to fall over and blow us an LZ. They complained about having to dig a hole in those rocks. So I turned to my 2 Vietnamese. If you're an American advisor, they assign you 2 Vietnamese soldiers. One was my bodyguard, one was my comforts guy. He made my bed, cooked my meals, and secondary bodyguard at the same time. I called them cowboys. And so I looked at my cowboys and I said, dig a hole big enough for the 3 of us. And they started digging. And so I took some C4, fell over, blew an LZ, and then I hear an old hollow thump, thump, thump. And I said, oh, that don't sound good. That sounds like a 60 millimeter mortar, and I bet they've got this hilltop zeroed in. Sure enough, they did.
Wow.
And then I hear 3 more, 3 more, and 3 more. And I said, oh my God, I hope my cowboys have got my hole dug, because we got 12 mortars in the air. And so I ran as fast as I could, prepared to do a swan dive in the hole that they had dug for the 3 of us.
A swan dive.
And when I got there, Lieutenant Green, the battalion commander, and the battalion commander's RTO was in my foxhole. And my 2 cowboys was standing over looking like, the hole's full, I'm sorry.
Right.
And so I seen a tree that had fallen, big, huge tree. And I said, I'm going to go face first into this tree. And I'm going to count these mortar rounds. And so I went face first. I thought to myself, if I get any shrapnel, I'm going to get it in the back. I'm not going to get it anywhere else, especially in my face. I thought I had a cute face back then. I didn't want my face messed up. So I counted to 12 impacts. And I said, wow, I don't feel any burning sensation. I don't think I'm wounded. And sure enough, all 12 impacted. And I said, now I'm going to get up and walk over to my foxhole, and I'm going to have a harsh conversation with the battalion commander, Lieutenant Green. Walked over to the foxhole. One of those 12 mortar rounds went in the only foxhole, Doug, my foxhole.
Oh, wow.
Killed the battalion commander, killed Lieutenant Green, and killed the battalion commander's RTO. The other 2 advisors were seriously wounded, and I was the only one not wounded or dead. I got 1 helicopter in. I got Lieutenant Green's body, the other 2 wounded out, the battalion commander's body. And then the fighting started, and I couldn't get any more helicopter support.
Yeah, by this time, they were all in. Or,
It was
yeah.
the war was on. The battle,
Yeah.
not the war, the battle.
Yeah.
The battle was on. I called back to the unit and explained what had happened, and the Vietnamese group commander appointed me as battalion commander. And I could see that because
Sure.
I spoke fluent Vietnamese back then, been in country 8 months. I had put him through U.S. Army Ranger School, so the tie was there. He had the utmost trust and faith in me, and so did the company commanders and the lieutenants.
No, it seemed like the right spot.
It was just,
right.
I was the person,
Right.
because without me and without that American on the radio, we got 0 air support, 0 artillery, 0 battleship. We got 0 support without an American voice on that radio. So we just cut through the chase. He made me the battalion commander, and we went into a 4-day, 4-night non-stop battle.
Wow.
During that 4-day, 4-night, the people, the Vietnamese lieutenants, I was recommended by the Vietnamese. You know, you have to have witness statements and recommendations, and they recommended me, and we had to have their witness statements transferred into English. Mm-hmm. And I've got them at home. Suzanne reads them every now and then.
Oh, wow, that must be really, wow. You must cherish that.
Yeah. So now, to get back to the initial question, was I expecting it? No. Got back, I remembered the battalion commander saying, I'm recommending you for the Medal of Honor. 3.5 years go by. Regulation says it has to be awarded within 3 years of the action. I didn't know there was a waiver for that. There is. It can be waived. Congress can waive that. And so I didn't know that. And so what had happened, President Nixon was not presenting any Medal of Honors. He got a group of 9 because it was an unpopular war.
It was. We'll get to that.
And he wanted to make a mass production. So that's why it went past the 3 years. They got a waiver. So I just said, yeah, that's it. 3.5 years gone by. Nah, not gonna get that, but it would have been nice. So I'm at work. I get a call that the commanding general wanted to see me. I worked in the headquarters building. I was the IG inspector for training. And every time I would give an unsatisfactory training report for the 3rd Brigade, back then Colonel Honeycutt, Hamburger Hill, Honeycutt.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I give it unsatisfactory, he would burst into the commanding general's office. That guy, Littrell, keep him out of my unit. He don't know anything about training. I'm training. He give me an unsatisfactory. So I heard that the division commander, General Berry, wanted to see me. I'm thinking, oh boy, what have I done now? You know, and I said, yep, I give Honeycutt's unit an unsatisfactory inspection. Okay, go down standing tests and listen to Honeycutt rant and rave and move on. So I walked in, and the commanding general said, Sergeant Littrell, how you doing? Come over on the couch and sit down. I want to talk to you. I said, oh my God, I have really messed up if he's going to take me over on the couch and talk to me. He made small talk for about 5 minutes, and it's just, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And he said, well, let me tell you why I called you in. So we just got called by the White House. President Nixon's going to present you the Medal of Honor.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was totally caught off guard, totally shocked.
Yeah. It almost seems like it's even better when you when it's surprised like that. I would think.
It put me in a state of shock.
Wow. Before we get over to the integrity path and wrapping up this Medal of Honor part of our discussion, which I'm just in a lot of ways in awe. When I was in the Marine Corps, if someone was wearing their Medal of Honor, and I think is there a ribbon for that as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I was taught that even an officer would have to salute the Medal of Honor person, even if the Medal of Honor person was enlisted. Is that still the case? Was it that case?
That's
in the
not
Army?
regulation.
Okay.
It's a custom.
Oh, it's a custom. Okay.
It's strictly a custom. And what they're doing is rendering a hand salute to the award.
That's
not
right.
the individual.
That's right. It's almost to the chest.
And I have been saluted by the president, the vice president, 4-star generals on down.
That's great.
And at first it was a little awkward, but then you
Sure.
grow accustomed to it.
Right.
And now whenever I see an officer and I'm wearing the medal, I'm just expecting them to render a hand salute.
Because we were taught that specifically in the Marines. That
Tradition.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I didn't register that it was tradition. But we were taught if there was someone with a Medal of Honor, wearing it on there, we're saluting them.
Salute.
I was enlisted, so a lot of times we're scared to do anything wrong, so we're just following everything
Right.
as if it's an order. Okay, fast forward over to now, to today, and in a lot of ways, why we're talking today, and that is the integrity path, which I think is something extremely important that you and your wife are doing and have started with the American Legion as a partner. We have that commitment to you. We want to support what you're doing. I was there, and I imagine that this is Sunday, November 16th. Veterans Day week. I can imagine you're probably a little tired of all the events you've had to attend. I've had to attend as commander of the American Legion. But I was actually emotional at the event that you did at at Bob Hope Patriotic Hall with all of the kids there talking about the core values, integrity path, and then of course Army and military experience. I was just really touched, and I'll tell you why. As I've said, if anyone caught it, I have a 14-year-old, and I just don't see a lot of core values being taught in school.
Right.
Church is not too popular out here in Southern California. It's losing popularity, and I'm a man of faith. So how do you get your core values? And at home, I try to teach my daughter, but my wife and I, but the minute she leaves, or the minute she goes to school, she's on her own. And you got to do your best to try to instill those values. So when you see agencies and nonprofits and companies and people like yourself bringing that to society, to the public, to our population out here in the United States, because you're nationwide, I see that. I just think it's so important, and you deliver it in a way though. It's like not even preachy. It's almost like you deliver it in a way that this is good for you. It's not good for me per se. This is good for you to be this way. So talk about the
I
integrity.
deliver it like a grandfather.
Is that how it is?
And, it's just like when I'm talking to these students, it's like I'm talking to my grandchildren.
Gotcha. So what's the integrity path? So that way for people to start learning more about the integrity path. What's the integrity path?
My wife, Suzanne, and I founded the Integrity Path. We go into schools and we talk to the students about the 6 core values of the Medal of Honor.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which are courage, commitment, sacrifice, integrity, citizenship, and patriotism. And we tell the children, if you'll take the 6 core values of this medal and apply that to your life today, you will be a better person. We really zero in on integrity. I tell the children that integrity is the most important word in the English language, and I truly believe that.
No, I've heard you say that.
Without integrity, you're an empty body without a soul. Without integrity, you could be that nobody that I felt when I was a young kid. Integrity, never lie, never cheat, and never steal. If you look up integrity in Webster, there's a laundry list of what it takes to have integrity. But in one paragraph, sentence right towards the bottom, it says, you never lie, you never steal, and you never cheat. I tell the students, first time you tell a lie, it's hard. Second time you tell a lie, it's a little easier. The third time, easier. Pretty soon, it's just as easy to tell a lie as it is to tell the truth. And at times, if you tell that lie often enough, you'll start to believe the lie yourself.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so, never lie. You know, I say to the students, I'll pick out a student and make eye contact with him, and I'll say, how do you want to be perceived by that person to your right and left? How do you want to be perceived by your parents and your teachers? But you know what? Look in the mirror. How do you want to be perceived by that image looking back at you?
Wow.
Okay?
And you're really hitting it deep. And I say that because I think we are born, and I think at various levels, obviously wide range of levels, we have different feelings about ourselves. But I think at the end of the day, most people want to feel good about themselves. They do. And they don't know how to get there, whether it's, you know, the parenting situation happens to be unfortunate or whatever the case may be. I do see the youth just looking for something. And I think with organizations such as yours, that to identify, so like pinpoint, you know, and explain it in a way coming from not only just your words, but through your experience, that gift that you're talking about, I got to hand it to you and your wife, and I'm a strong supporter and believer of what you're doing personally, and American Legion is. So I'm wish you the best with this, and take it as far as you can go. I'm sure you will, and you have our support. Before I close out on that, why don't you talk about how they can find out more about the Integrity Path? Do you have your website up?
We do.
Okay.
We have a website. It's called theintegritypath.org.
Okay.
And we'll ask, you know, if you like what we're doing and you want to assist us financially, which will get us in more schools in front of more children, there's a donation on the integritypath.org website. Hit that donation site. And as I said numerous times, a donation from $1 up to $1 million is greatly appreciated.
I'm the same way. I have run a nonprofit. When I see someone really coming from the heart, sometimes with even a lesser amount, it's almost, it's in a lot of ways more appreciated because they're giving it.
It is.
Right. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows you're a 501c3. So
Yes, we are.
That this is great.
We have 0 employees.
That's right.
Every penny goes back to the children.
Yeah, so
no one is paid, Joe.
Right. No, I know. They usually, the good ratios, 80% goes to the cause, 20% go to admin. I think 99.99% goes to the cause.
To the cause.
Right. I'll close with this. So the reason why I'm so passionate about Vietnam veterans, I think I maybe have mentioned this to you several times. In our meetings, I'm always asking for the Vietnam veterans to stand. And over the years, they're getting less and less, you know, as time passes. But before they were going to ship us out to Saudi Arabia, and I actually ended up not going, but twice I was on a tarmac. It was a really, really intense time. The whole country, I don't know if you remember this, the whole country was nervous. And they kept talking about this would be the first major conflict since Vietnam, the major one. I remember this Grenada, they had all these other ones, but this was going to be the first major one. And I remember the country coming together, kind of saying this unofficially, maybe officially, said, we are not going to treat the military, the veterans that go there, whether we agree with it or not. And when they come back, we're not going to treat them like the way we treat the Vietnam veterans. And from that time forward, there's many of us that thought, well, what does the Vietnam veterans go through? I mean, we heard, and then we kind of researched it more and more and more. And then when I got out, I had my own little PTSD. I saw all of the issues with, I would go to the VA hospital, and I'd see a lot of the veterans that are roaming around, talking to the air or pointing, just having all kinds of issues out of the Vietnam era. And it just broke my heart that the country at that particular time when it got out didn't do enough.
Right.
And as a result of that commitment to the veterans, it's because of the Vietnam veterans paved that way. That sacrifice, not knowing that you were sacrificing your care after the military, that a lot of us are very appreciative of. I'm telling you, I was at an event last night, the Star Post, 291, 391, I don't remember. Star Post, they'll criticize me later. But they said, all Vietnam veterans, please stand up and welcome home. We don't ever forget what you guys did for us. So thank you very much, Gary Littrell, friend, Command Sgt Major, now CEO, co-chairman, I would think, of the Integrity Path.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
it's a wrap.